The knock on my cab door wasn't the rhythmic rap of a lot lizard or the heavy pound of a dot officer. It was quiet, terrified, and barely audible over the drumming rain. I checked my mirror, seeing nothing but the wet asphalt of the Missouri rest stop, reflecting the neon buzz of the open sign. I almost ignored it, almost kept my head down and focused on my logbook. But then it came again, desperate and frantic. I rolled the window down 2 inches, letting the freezing mist hiss into the warm cab. A face looked up at me, pale and streaked with mud, illuminated by the amber marker lights. It was a boy, maybe 10 years old, shivering in a soaking wet t-shirt. But it wasn't the cold that made my stomach turn. It was the left side of his face. His eye was swollen shut, purple and angry, the skin split at the brow. He didn't ask for money. He didn't ask for a ride. He reached up, gripping the door handle with trembling fingers, and whispered, "He's coming. Please, can you be my dad for just one morning? If you don't, he's going to kill me." Before I could answer, headlights swept across the lot, and a beat-up sedan screeched to a halt 3 rows over, its engine revving like a predator scenting blood. I didn't unlock the door immediately. That's a rookie mistake. And I've been hauling freight long enough to know that opening your fortress to a stranger is the quickest way to end up dead in a ditch. But looking at that kid, something in my chest tightened. That old, rusted-over part of me that used to believe in fair fights. The sedan's door slammed shut across the lot, the sound cracking like a pistol shot through the heavy rain. A man stepped out. He was big, moving with the jagged, stumbling aggression of a drunk who's looking for something to break. He started checking trucks, banging on doors, shouting a name I couldn't make out over the storm. "Please," the kid whispered again. His voice cracked high and thin. "Just for the school thing, the dads and donuts thing. He said if I tell anyone about the eye, he'd finish it." I looked at the bruising again. It wasn't accidental. That was a knuckles-to-bone impact, a deliberate act of cruelty stamped onto a child. I unlocked the passenger door. "Get in," I said, my voice low. "Stay low, into the sleeper." The boy scrambled up the steps, slipping on the wet metal, and practically dove into the space behind my seats. I pulled the curtain shut just as the man in the lot reached the row next to us. I sat there in the driver's seat, lights off, breathing slow. I'm a big guy, 6'4", built like a refrigerator that's seen too many moves, but I don't go looking for trouble. I just haul steel and mind my business. But there's a line. There's always a line, and hitting a kid so hard his eyes swell shut, that's about a mile past it. I watched the man through the side mirror. He was wearing a grease-stained mechanic's jacket and jeans that hung low. He had a tire iron in his right hand, tapping it against his thigh. Tap. Tap, tap. He was hunting. He moved to the truck on my left, a swift carrier, and hammered the iron against the fuel tank. The driver inside yelled something, and the man screamed back, "I know he's out here! I know that little rat is hiding!" The boy behind me let out a whimper. I reached back blindly, putting a hand on his shoulder. He was vibrating, shaking so hard it felt like the engine was idling. "Quiet," I rumbled. "I got you." The man reached my truck. He didn't knock. He smashed the tire iron against the driver's side step, the metal ringing out, jarring my teeth. "Open up! I saw the light!" I didn't move. I evaluated. If I opened the door, I was escalating. If I stayed shut, he might start breaking glass. And if he broke the glass, he'd see the kid. The situation had already changed. I was harboring a fugitive in the eyes of this maniac. "I know you're in there!" he roared, trying to wrench the door handle. It was locked. He slammed the iron against the window, spiderwebbing the glass. That was it, the irreversible change. He'd attacked my rig. I didn't yell, I didn't warn him. I shoved the door open with my shoulder, using the heavy steel weight of it as a weapon. It caught him square in the chest, knocking the wind out of him and sending him stumbling back onto the wet asphalt. I stepped down, boots splashing in the oily puddle, unfolding to my full height. I kept my hands open but ready, my center of gravity low. "You got a problem, friend?" I asked. My voice was calm, the kind of calm that scares smart people. He scrambled up, face twisted in rage. He was younger than me, faster maybe, but he was sloppy with drink and anger. "You got my kid in there? I saw him run this way, that little ungrateful brat." "I don't see a kid," I lied, stepping between him and the cab door. "I see a man damaging my property." "Move, fat man," he spat, raising the tire iron, "or I'll crack your skull like I cracked his." He admitted it. He didn't even care. He swung. It was a wild haymaker swing aimed at my temple. If it connected, I'd be eating through a straw. But I've been in enough parking lot scraps to know that telegraphed punches are gifts. I stepped inside the arc, the iron whistling past my ear, and drove my left fist into his solar plexus. The air left him in a rush, a wet whoosh sound. He doubled over, dropping the iron. I didn't stop. You don't stop until the threat is neutralized. I grabbed the back of his greasy collar and the belt of his jeans, marching him backward until I slammed him against the side of his own sedan. He groaned, trying to claw at my face, his fingernails digging into my neck. I tightened my grip, pinning him there. "You listen to me," I growled, leaning in close so he could smell the coffee and stale tobacco on my breath. "You touch that truck again, and you and I are going to have a very different conversation, one the cops will need a mop to clean up." He spat at me, saliva hitting my cheek. "You think you're tough? You think you can take my son?" He laughed, a breathless, wheezing sound. "I'm his father. The law says he's mine, and I've got buddies coming. We're going to tear that rig apart." He shoved off the car, slipping out of my grip because of the rain and the slick fabric of his jacket. He didn't attack again, though. He retreated, stumbling toward the driver's side of his car. "You better run, trucker. I'm calling the boys. We'll see you at the school. I know where he wants to go." He slammed his door and peeled out, tires screeching, spraying gravel and water over my legs. I watched his taillights fade, the adrenaline humming in my veins like high-tension wire. He wasn't done. He was escalating. He was going to bring a pack. I turned back to my truck. The spider-webbed window caught the light. I climbed back inside, shaking the water off. The kid, Leo, I'd learned his name was peeking through the curtains, eyes wide with terror. "He's coming back," Leo whispered. "He's got friends, bad friends." "Let him come," I said, wiping the spit off my cheek. I cranked the engine, the diesel rumble shaking the cab. It was a comforting sound, a sound of power. "Where's this school, Leo?" "Lincoln Elementary." "But you can't go. There's too many of them." I put the truck in gear. "I've been outnumbered before, kid. Buckle up." We rolled out of the rest stop, merging onto the highway. The rain was coming down harder now, a deluge that blurred the world into streaks of grey and black. Leo sat in the passenger seat, his small hands gripping the armrest until his knuckles were white. He told me the story in fragments. His mom took off a year ago. Stepdad moved in. The drinking started. Then the hitting. The Dads and Donuts event was tomorrow morning. Today, technically, since it was past midnight. He wanted to go so bad, just to feel normal, but the stepdad had laughed at him, then hit him when he begged. "I just wanted someone to stand there," Leo said, his voice barely audible over the hum of the tires. "Just stand there so the other kids wouldn't ask why I'm alone." My hands tightened on the wheel. I've hauled hazardous materials, explosives, and oversized loads through blizzards. But this was the heaviest weight I'd ever carried. "I'll stand there," I said, but I knew the man, Slick I called him in my head, wasn't bluffing. He knew the school. He knew we were coming, and a lone trucker against a gang of locals in a town I didn't know. That was a suicide run. I checked my dash. 2 a.m. The event started at 8 a.m. We had 6 hours to kill and a target painted on our backs. I picked up the CB mic. I didn't know if anyone was listening. The channels are mostly dead air and garbage these days, but sometimes the old guard is out there. "Breaker 19, I said, keeping my voice steady. "This is Redline. I'm southbound on I-44. I've got a situation." A 1042 involving a minor. Abusive parent in pursuit with backup. I'm heading to Lincoln Elementary in Springfield. If there's anyone out there who remembers what the job used to mean. I could use some eyes. Static. Then a crackle. Then silence. I hung the mic up. Maybe nobody was out there. Maybe I was on my own. I looked at Leo. He had fallen asleep, exhausted by the fear, his head resting against the cold glass. I reached over and adjusted the heater, directing the vent toward him. We parked a few miles from the school in an abandoned Kmart lot to wait out the darkness. I didn't sleep. I sat with my tire thumper across my lap, watching the shadows. Every car that passed made my muscles tense. Around 4 a.m., a pickup truck circled the lot slowly. I watched it hand on the door handle. It paused, headlights sweeping my cab, then drove off. A scout. They knew where we were. The sun started to bleed grey into the sky. I woke Leo up with a fresh cup of coffee from my thermos and a honey bun I had in the back. He ate it like he hadn't seen food in days. Time to go, I said. We pulled up to the school at 7:30 a.m. It was a nice place. Brick building, playground, moms in SUVs dropping off kids. It looked peaceful. It looked safe. But as I turned my rig onto the wide street, running parallel to the entrance, no way I was fitting in the drop-off loop, I saw them. Slick's sedan was there, but he wasn't alone. There were 4 other cars, rusty beaters and lifted trucks, blocking the far end of the street. Men were leaning against them, smoking cigarettes, watching us approach. There were at least 10 of them. They held baseball bats, tire irons, and one guy had a chain wrapped around his fist. They were blocking the road to the school entrance. They were waiting for us. He brought his friends, Leo whispered, shrinking down in the seat. Don't stop, Jack. Please don't stop. They'll hurt you. I'm not stopping, I said, shifting down. And I'm not running. I pulled the air horn. Honk! The sound blasted through the morning quiet, turning heads in the parking lot. I rolled the truck forward, closing the distance to the blockade. The men stepped off the curb, forming a wall. Slick was in the middle, grinning. He pointed at me, then drew a finger across his throat. I stopped the truck 20 yards from them. I set the brake. Stay here, Leo. Lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone but me. Jack, no! I grabbed my tire thumper, solid hickory, weighted with lead, and opened the door. I stepped down onto the street. The morning air was crisp, smelling of wet leaves and exhaust. I walked toward them, 1 man against 10. Slick laughed. Look at this. The hero showed up. I told you boys he was dumb. Give me the boy, Slick yelled, stepping forward, and maybe we only break your legs. I kept walking until I was 10 feet away. I could see the malice in their eyes. They were bullies, plain and simple, wolves looking for a sheep, but they didn't realize they'd just cornered a bear. The boy stays with me, I said, my voice carrying over the idling engines. Move the cars. Get him, Slick screamed. 2 of them rushed me, young guys, eager to impress the boss. The first one swung a bat. I stepped inside the swing, taking the impact on my shoulder. It hurt like hell, a sharp crack of pain, but I grabbed the bat with my left hand and drove the tire thumper into his knee with my right. He screamed and went down. The second guy hesitated, and I used that second to kick him square in the chest, sending him sprawling back into the others. You want to do this? I roared, the calm finally cracking to reveal the soldier beneath. Come on then! But there were still 8 of them, and they were swarming now. I swung the thumper, catching a guy in the ribs, but another tackled me from behind. I went down hard on the asphalt, gravel biting into my cheek. Boots rained down on me. I curled up, protecting my head, lashing out with my legs. I felt a rib crack. I tasted blood. Drag him out, Slick yelled. Get the keys, get the kid. I fought to get up, grabbing a leg and twisting, hearing a snap. I managed to rise to one knee, panting, blood dripping from my nose. They circled me, wary now, but closing in for the kill. I was done. I couldn't take all of them. I'd failed the kid. Then I felt it before I heard it, a vibration in the pavement, a low, rhythmic thrumming that grew louder and louder. The men stopped. They looked around, confused. Then the air horn started. Not 1, not 2. A chorus. The vibration in the asphalt wasn't just noise, it was a tectonic shift. I looked past the circle of men surrounding me, past the blood dripping from my nose, and saw the crest of the hill. A Peterbilt 379, massive and chrome-clad, crested the rise. It was moving fast, way too fast for a school zone, smoke pouring from its stacks like dual chimneys of hellfire. Then another, a Kenworth, a Freightliner, a beat-up Mack. They were coming too wide, taking up the entire width of the road, a wall of steel and diesel rolling toward us. Slick turned around, his eyes going wide. The grin slid off his face like grease on a hot skillet. The lead truck, a bright red Pete with a bull bar that looked like it could derail a train, slammed on its air brakes. The hiss was deafening, a mechanical cobra strike. It stopped 5 feet from Slick's sedan, the grille looming over the small car like a mountain. The others pulled in behind, beside, and onto the grass verges, boxing the entire intersection in. The silence that followed was heavy. The only sound was the idle of 22 heavy-duty diesel engines, a collective growl that rattled the bones. Doors opened. They didn't jump out screaming. That's what amateurs do. These men stepped out, slowly, deliberately. They wore flannel, high-vis vests, grease-stained tees. They held winch bars, tire irons, and heavy flashlights. They were black, white, Hispanic, old, young. It didn't matter. The road makes everyone the same color, diesel soot. The man from the red Pete stepped down. He was older than me, with a beard like steel wool and arms as thick as drive shafts. He looked at me, taking in my bleeding face and the men circling me. He didn't say a word. He just nodded. Then he looked at Slick. "You boys lost?" the trucker asked. His voice was gravel grinding on concrete. Slick's bravado cracked, but he was too stupid to let it shatter. "This ain't your business, old man. Move those trucks or You'll what?" The trucker stepped forward, tapping a 3-foot winch bar against his palm. "You're blocking a school zone. You're assaulting a driver, and you're terrifying a child." Slick looked at his crew. "Get 'em. There's only a lot of them." Slick's goons hesitated. They were street brawlers, used to scaring mums and dads. They weren't ready for men who wrestle 80,000 pounds of steel through ice storms for a living. But Slick, panicked and cornered, made the mistake of the century. He pulled a knife, a jagged, rusted blade, and he lunged, not at the new truckers, but at me. He thought I was the weak link. He thought because I was on one knee, I was done. He was wrong. I saw the flash of steel, and the adrenaline spike cleared the pain in my ribs instantly. I didn't dodge. I stepped into the guard, catching his wrist with my left hand, ignoring the slice of the blade across my forearm. I clamped down, twisting his wrist outward with a sickening pop, and drove my forehead into the bridge of his nose. Crack! Slick screamed, dropping the knife. I didn't let him fall. I was done being the victim. I grabbed him by the throat and slammed him onto the hood of his own sedan. That was the signal. The street exploded into chaos. The other truckers surged forward. It wasn't a fight. It was a clean-up operation. One of Slick's guys swung a bat at the bearded driver, who simply caught the bat mid-swing, ripped it out of the punk's hands, and tossed it into the bushes before delivering a right hook that could have knocked out a mule. I didn't watch the rest. My world was Slick. He clawed at my face, thumbs gouging for my eyes. "I'll kill you! I'll kill that brat!" he shrieked, spitting blood. "You're never touching him again!" I snarled. I hauled him off the hood and threw him toward the ditch. He scrambled up, trying to run, scrambling on all fours like a frantic rat. I followed him. He wasn't getting away. This wasn't just about escape anymore. This was about ensuring he never felt bold enough to raise a hand to Leo again. I caught him by the back of his jacket, just as he reached the muddy embankment. I spun him around. He threw a desperate, flailing punch that caught my bruised jaw. It hurt, but the rage fueled me. I blocked his next swing and delivered a piston-like body shot to his liver. He folded. I grabbed him by the collar, dragging him back up to the road. The fight around us was already over. His crew was either on the ground zip-tied, truckers always have zip ties, or sprinting away through the woods. I threw Slick down at the feet of the bearded trucker. "This is the father!" I spat, wiping blood from my mouth. The bearded driver looked down at Slick, then at me. "Cops are 3 minutes out." "We heard you on Channel 19, driver. We were at the truck stop down the road." I nodded, my chest heaving. "Thanks." "Don't thank us yet," he said, pointing to my truck. "You got a job to do." I looked back at my rig. Leo was pressing his face against the glass, eyes wide as saucers. He had seen it all. He had seen the monsters fall. The sirens wailed in the distance, getting louder. "Go!" the bearded driver said. "We'll handle the trash. You get that boy inside." I walked back to my truck. My legs felt heavy, and every breath was a sharp stab in my side, but I stood tall. I climbed up the steps and opened the door. Leo looked at me, at the blood on my shirt, the swelling on my cheek. He didn't look scared of me. He looked relieved. "Is he gone?" Leo asked, his voice trembling. "He's done, Leo," I said softly. "Grab your backpack." "But look at you," he whispered. "You're hurt." "I've had worse from a clutch pedal," I lied. "Come on, we're going to be late for donuts." We climbed down. The rain had stopped, leaving the world washed clean and grey. The truckers had formed a corridor. 2 lines of rough, tired, hard men standing shoulder to shoulder, creating a path from my truck to the school's front doors. I took Leo's hand. It was small and cold. "Head up," I told him. "Walk tall." We started walking. As we passed the first trucker, he tipped his hat. "Morning, son," he said gently. "Morning," Leo squeaked. The next one, a giant in a sleeveless shirt, gave him a thumbs up. "Looking sharp, kid." We walked through the gauntlet of steel and Brotherhood. These weren't just drivers, they were a shield wall. Leo squeezed my hand tighter, but his stride lengthened. He wasn't the scared kid shivering in my cab anymore. He was walking with an army. We reached the front doors of the school. The principal was standing there looking terrified, watching the police cruisers screech to a halt down the street where the truckers had Slick pinned. "Can I help you?" she stammered, looking at my bloodied face. "We are here for the Dads and Donuts event," I said, my voice calm, contrasting with my appearance. "I'm stand-in guardian for Leo today." She looked at Leo, then at the 22 truck drivers standing behind us in the parking lot, silent and watchful. "I see," she said, her expression softening. "Right this way." The gymnasium smelled like floor wax and cheap coffee. It was full of fathers in suits, fathers in mechanics' uniforms, fathers in sweatpants. They were holding donuts, laughing, clapping each other on the back. When we walked in, the room went quiet. I knew what we looked like. A battered, bloody trucker and a boy with a black eye. We were a walking trauma unit, but I didn't let go of Leo's hand. We walked to the sign-in table. I wrote my name, Jack Mercer. Under relationship, I paused for a second. The pen hovered over the paper. I wrote, driver. We got our donuts, glazed, slightly stale, and found a spot at a table in the back. The other dads stared. Some whispered. I ignored them. I focused on Leo. He took a bite of his donut, getting sugar on his nose. For the first time since I met him, a small, tentative smile broke through the bruising on his face. "Is it okay?" I asked. "It's the best," he said. The double doors swung open again. I tensed, expecting trouble, but it wasn't trouble. The bearded driver walked in. Then the guy in the sleeveless shirt, then the rest of them. One by one, 22 truck drivers filed into the elementary school gym. They didn't have kids here, they didn't have donuts, but they filled the room, lining the back wall, standing with their arms crossed, smiling at Leo. The other dads shifted, looking uncomfortable, realizing their suits and ties didn't carry half the weight of the diesel-stained flannel standing guard. Leo looked around, his eyes shining. He wasn't the kid with the black eye anymore. He was the kid with the biggest family in the room. We stayed for an hour. We ate donuts. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. When it was time to go, the police were waiting outside. They had statements to take, reports to file. Slick was in cuffs in the back of a cruiser, looking small and defeated. I walked Leo to the principal's office, where the social workers were waiting. They told me they had taken custody. They told me he was going to a foster home, a good one, until they could find an aunt in Nebraska. I knelt down one last time. My ribs were throbbing, screaming for rest. "You did good, kid," I said. Leo threw his arms around my neck. He hugged me tight, burying his face in my bloody shirt. "Thank you, Jack." "Thank you. Keep your eyes on the road, Leo," I whispered, patting his back, "and check your mirrors." I walked out of the school alone. The other drivers had already dispersed, fading back onto the highways, ghosts in the mist. I climbed into my cab, the silence of the truck wrapping around me like a heavy blanket. I wiped the blood off the steering wheel with a rag. I put it in gear. The engine rumbled, a deep, steady heartbeat. I didn't look back. I couldn't. If I looked back, I might turn around, and the road only goes one way. I merged onto the interstate, the white lines blurring into a hypnotic rhythm. Just another load, just another mile. But as I shifted into high gear, I reached up and touched the dashcam. It was recording. It saw everything. And somewhere in the digital memory, there was a shot of a boy eating a donut, smiling like he owned the world. That was enough fuel to get me to the next state.